If you are listening to this right now, it is not accidental. This message does not reach everyone. It reaches the ones who feel shifts before they are announced, the ones who sense movement before the ground visibly cracks. You were not meant to hear this earlier. Only now. February 17th is not just another date on a calendar. And this Ring of Fire eclipse is not just another celestial event people will photograph and forget. Most will overlook it. Most will scroll past it. But you didn't. Something in you paused. Something in you leaned closer. That pause matters. This eclipse is not loud. It doesn't demand attention. It ignites quietly, like a thin circle of fire suspended in the sky, subtle but impossible to ignore once seen. And what makes it powerful isn't spectacle. It's timing. You are early to something. While others are still distracted by surface-level noise, you're already sensing a shift in the undercurrent. It feels like anticipation without a clear object, like standing in an empty room that you know won't stay empty for long. You can't explain it, but you feel it building. This is not imagination. The February 17th Ring of Fire eclipse acts as an ignition point, not the climax of change, but the spark that begins the unfolding of 2026 in your life. Not everything will change overnight. That's not how real transformation works. Instead, something internal locks into place. A direction sets. A quiet decision forms. And at first, no one else will see it. That's why this moment feels lonely. Being early often feels like isolation. When you sense a shift before others do, you question yourself. You wonder if you're overthinking, if you're reading too much into subtle signs. But your sensitivity isn't exaggeration. It's perception. You've been feeling like something is about to begin, even if nothing visible has begun yet. That feeling is accurate. This eclipse is not random in your timeline. It arrives as a marker. A dividing line between the version of you that was surviving and the version of you that is about to move with intention. It may not look dramatic from the outside. You may still wake up in the same room, go to the same places, speak to the same people. But internally, something will shift direction. And once direction shifts, momentum follows. You were not meant to recognize this too early. And you were not meant to miss it either. You are here because you are ready to notice. And this is only the beginning. The edge of decision. The eclipse does not arrive after the decision. It arrives while you are standing at the edge of one. That tension you've been feeling lately, that subtle internal pressure, it isn't confusion. It's compression. Something inside you has been building, layer by layer, thought by thought, until now it feels almost impossible to ignore. You may have noticed it in small moments. When you hesitate before replying to someone. When you stare at a message and feel resistance you can't explain. When you imagine your future and something about the current path feels slightly misaligned. Not wrong, just no longer true. This is what the verge feels like. Eclipses synchronize with internal thresholds. They don't show up after clarity. They show up while you are still wrestling with it. That's why this phase feels unstable. You're between identities, between decisions, between the comfort of what you know and the pull of what you're becoming. And that in-between space can feel lonely. You may have questioned yourself recently, wondered why you can't seem to fully commit, either to staying or to leaving. Why you feel both attachment and detachment at the same time. Why motivation surges one day and disappears the next. It's not inconsistency. It's transition. There is a difference between being lost and being on the edge of change. When you're lost, everything feels scattered. When you're on the edge, everything feels concentrated, heavy, focused. Like all roads are narrowing into one unavoidable choice. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not failing to figure it out. You are exactly where this eclipse meets you, at the brink. The February 17th energy doesn't force decisions. It illuminates the cost of avoiding them. It quietly magnifies the tension you've been trying to tolerate, the conversations you've postponed, the truth you've softened, the path you've delayed stepping onto. You may have felt this late at night when distractions fade and your mind starts circling the same thought again. That persistent inner whisper. Something has to shift. And here's what matters. That whisper is not panic. It's alignment pressing forward. The pressure you feel is not the universe pushing you out of something prematurely. It's the internal buildup finally reaching readiness. Fruit doesn't fall before it ripens. Decisions don't solidify before clarity matures. You're not cracking. You are crystallizing. The eclipse simply meets you at that crystallization point. It reflects back what has already been forming inside you for months. And once you see it clearly, it becomes harder to pretend you don't. This is the edge. And edges are uncomfortable because they require movement. But something inside you already knows which direction feels lighter. And in the next phase, that knowing becomes impossible to ignore. Sensitivity before the shift. Before a major shift becomes visible, it becomes physical. You may have noticed it quietly at first. A lower tolerance for noise. A stronger reaction to certain people's energy. An urge to step back from conversations that once felt normal. You're not becoming distant. You're becoming precise. In the days leading up to this eclipse, your system begins recalibrating. Not dramatically. Not in ways others can easily see. But internally, your sensitivity sharpens. Sounds feel louder. Emotions feel heavier. Even digital stimulation. Endless scrolling, constant notifications, feels like static against something sacred. You may find yourself leaving messages unread longer than usual. Not because you don't care, but because your energy feels selective. This is not isolation. It's refinement. There is a difference between withdrawing out of fear and withdrawing out of alignment. Right now, what you're experiencing is alignment. Your nervous system is adjusting to a new frequency, and that adjustment requires space, silence, fewer inputs. You may have felt this when you suddenly needed more rest, or when you sat in a quiet room and realized you preferred it that way, or when certain friendships started to feel slightly out of sync, not wrong, just misaligned. That's calibration. Your inner perception is accelerating faster than your external life. And when the inside moves quicker than the outside, there's a strange sensation, like you're ahead of your own timeline. Like you've already emotionally left something that hasn't physically ended yet. That gap can feel disorienting, but it's temporary. The Ring of Fire eclipse doesn't just ignite action. It prepares the vessel first. And you are the vessel. Before fire reshapes form, the material must be ready to hold heat. That's what the sensitivity is doing. You may notice old coping mechanisms losing their comfort. Distractions don't distract the same way. Escapes don't soothe the same way. Even habits you once relied on feel slightly hollow. That's not loss. That's evolution. When your system begins rejecting noise, it's because clarity is trying to surface. When solitude feels safer than stimulation, it's because your inner voice is getting louder and it doesn't want to compete anymore. You are not becoming fragile. You are becoming finely tuned. And once you are tuned to a clearer frequency, something else begins to change. Not your surroundings yet, but your standards. And that is where this eclipse becomes very specific. Conviction changes the current. This eclipse does not respond to vague wishes. It responds to conviction. You may have spent months, maybe longer, quietly hoping for change, imagining different outcomes, visualizing better circumstances. But somewhere deep down, there was still hesitation, still a part of you leaving the door half open to the familiar. This energy does not move for half decisions. The Ring of Fire is precise. It forms a circle that is not fully covered, not fully dark, a reminder that transformation here is not destruction. It is refinement, and refinement requires clarity, not 10 desires. One truth. You don't need a perfectly mapped out plan. You don't need every step revealed. What this eclipse asks for is simpler and harder. Who are you no longer willing to be? That's the real declaration. You may have felt this question rising recently, in quiet moments, in subtle frustration, in that almost imperceptible discomfort when you agree to something that no longer fits. A version of you has been expiring. Not dramatically, not with chaos, just quietly losing relevance. And you've known it. Manifestation is often misunderstood. It's not about asking the universe repeatedly for something better. It's about aligning your identity with what you're ready to hold. When identity shifts, reality follows. Not because of magic, but because your decisions change. And decisions change direction. This eclipse amplifies decisive energy. If you declare something clearly, even privately, it sets a current in motion. If you remain scattered, the current diffuses. That's why this moment feels intense. It is asking for internal alignment before external movement. You may notice your fantasies becoming sharper. Not daydreams, but realizations. The kind that make your chest tighten slightly because they feel real. The kind that make you whisper to yourself, if I actually did that, everything would change. Yes, that's the point. But conviction does not mean recklessness. It doesn't require dramatic exits or impulsive announcements. It requires an internal line being drawn. A quiet, unshakable decision about your standard, your direction, your worth. Once that line is drawn, you feel it. There's a steadiness, a calm intensity, less overthinking, fewer internal debates. Just a grounded knowing that something is no longer negotiable. And when something becomes non-negotiable inside you, the outer world begins reorganizing around it. You won't see it immediately, but you will feel the shift in how you carry yourself. And that is when the clearing begins. Clearing what still holds you. As the eclipse approaches, resistance doesn't disappear. It concentrates. You may notice old distractions getting louder. Procrastination intensifying. Small tasks suddenly feeling heavy. This isn't a setback. It's a signal. Anything unresolved becomes more visible under eclipse energy, not to punish you, but to show you what still has a grip. Unfinished conversations. Unsent messages. Clutter you keep meaning to clear. These are not random. Loose ends act like energetic anchors. They keep part of you facing backward, even when your body is pointed forward. And before momentum can build, those anchors have to be acknowledged. You don't need to resolve everything, but you do need to stop pretending certain things don't matter. You may feel this in physical space first. A sudden urge to clean, to throw things away, to reorganize rooms that have felt stagnant. Spaces hold memory. And when identity shifts, your environment often needs to catch up. That drawer you avoid opening. That corner of the room that feels heavy. That object tied to an old version of you. Clearing is not about perfection. It's about signal. It tells your nervous system, I am making room. You may also feel this emotionally. Old conflicts resurface, not loudly, but as quiet reminders. A relationship you've been tolerating rather than choosing. A dynamic where you keep shrinking to maintain peace. Eclipse energy doesn't tolerate half-closure. It brings awareness to what is unresolved, so it can either be healed or released. Avoidance feels heavier right now for a reason. The pressure you feel when you delay something is an anxiety. It's misalignment being highlighted. This is the moment where small, practical actions matter more than grand intentions. Send a message. Set the boundary. Let go of the object. Finish the task. Each act of clearing strengthens your forward momentum. It's like removing weight before movement. You don't rush. You don't force. You simply stop carrying what no longer belongs to the version of you that's emerging. You may notice that once you clear even one thing, something shifts internally. Breath comes easier. Focus sharpens. The future feels slightly closer, not because it's rushing toward you, but because you've stopped blocking the path. The eclipse doesn't demand chaos. It prefers readiness. And as space opens, a deeper understanding of this ring of fire begins to reveal itself, not as destruction, but as controlled transformation. The meaning of the ring of fire. Not all eclipses are meant to erase what came before. This one is different. A ring of fire eclipse is annular. The light is never fully gone. The center is shadowed, but the core remains visible, glowing, contained. This matters more than most people realize. This is not about collapse. It's about reshaping. In your life, something is changing form without being destroyed. The essence remains. The truth remains. But the way it expresses itself can no longer stay the same. You may have feared that choosing differently would mean losing everything. Burning bridges. Starting from nothing. But this eclipse doesn't demand that kind of loss. It asks for evolution. What no longer fits is not ripped away. It is outgrown. You keep the wisdom. You keep the lessons. You keep the core of who you are. Only the structure changes. This is why the shift feels controlled rather than chaotic. Why there's intensity without panic. Fire without destruction. The Ring of Fire teaches transformation with continuity, becoming without disappearing. You may recognize this in yourself already. You're not rejecting your past. You're integrating it. You're not denying where you've been. You're refining how it lives within you. This is maturity of awakening, when you stop trying to escape your history and instead allow it to fuel your direction. That glow around the eclipse, that thin, undeniable ring, mirrors what's happening inside you. Your core is bright, intact, untouched by doubt. What's dissolving is the outer shell that no longer protects or expresses you accurately. This kind of change doesn't require announcement. It doesn't need validation. It unfolds quietly, steadily, with precision. Others may not notice right away. They'll just sense something is different. Your energy steadier. Your presence more grounded. Your reactions calmer, but firmer. You are no longer dimming to maintain old forms. And because this eclipse preserves the core, it also preserves choice. You are not being pushed. You are being invited. Invited to step into a version of yourself that carries light without needing to explain it. This is not the end of anything essential. It is the beginning of something truer. And once the eclipse passes, the signs won't be symbolic anymore. They'll be practical. They'll move. Selective activation. After the eclipse passes, the sky will look normal again. But your life won't feel exactly the same. Not because everything changes overnight, but because certain things begin moving with unusual precision. And here is what most people misunderstand. Eclipses do not activate everyone equally. They are selective frequencies. Some will continue as observers. Routine intact. Patterns unchanged. But for a smaller group, the ones already standing at the edge, internally, movement begins. If you are part of that group, you will notice it subtly at first. A conversation that feels timed. An invitation that seems random but aligns perfectly. An idea that arrives fully formed, undeniable. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just precise. You may receive a message you weren't expecting. Or reconnect with someone at exactly the moment your direction shifts. Or stumble across information that answers a question you've been quietly carrying for months. These are not coincidences. They are confirmations. When internal conviction locks in, external alignment accelerates. The world begins reflecting back the decision you made privately. And the speed may surprise you. Not chaotic speed, but clean movement. Obstacles that once felt heavy start dissolving. Doors that were unclear begin outlining themselves. You may even notice a difference in how people respond to you. More respect. More attention. More curiosity. Not because you changed who you are, but because you stopped wavering in it. Selective activation also means selective separation. You may feel a natural distancing from certain environments without conflict. No dramatic fallout. Just a quiet understanding that your trajectory no longer overlaps the way it once did. This isn't loss. It's sorting. The movement group and the observer group begin to separate energetically. And if you feel motion beginning under your feet, that's your confirmation. You were not meant to watch the shift. You were meant to participate in it. And what begins now is not a burst of transformation. It's the first domino in a sequence that extends far beyond February. The ignition has happened. Now the unfolding begins. The 6-month domino effect. This eclipse is not the climax. It is the ignition. What begins on February 17th does not explode outward in one dramatic display. It sets direction. And direction, when chosen consciously, creates a chain reaction that unfolds quietly over time. Think of this as the first domino. At first, the movement is almost imperceptible. A shift in how you speak. A boundary you hold without over-explaining. A choice that feels small but internally monumental. Nothing looks extraordinary from the outside. But internally, trajectory has changed. And once trajectory changes, the destination cannot remain the same. From February to August, The unfolding will not feel rushed. It will feel guided, each month revealing the consequence of the quiet conviction you claimed during the eclipse. Conversations aligning, opportunities surfacing, old paths naturally closing without force. You won't need to chase what is meant to meet you. It will step forward because you did. There may be moments where you forget this began with something subtle. You may look around mid-year and realize you are standing in circumstances that once felt distant, not because you manifested wildly, but because you committed clearly. That is the domino effect. One internal decision becomes a new behavior. New behavior creates new patterns. New patterns open new doors. And by the time August arrives, you may struggle to recognize the version of yourself that hesitated before February 17th. Not because that version was weak, but because it was waiting. This 6-month arc is about stabilization, becoming comfortable in the identity you quietly chose, learning how to hold it without shrinking, walking forward without constantly checking behind you. And there will still be questions. Growth never eliminates uncertainty entirely, but the quality of your uncertainty will change. It will feel expansive instead of anxious, curious instead of fearful. You won't feel like you're hoping for a breakthrough. You'll feel like you're building from one. The ring of fire marked the ignition point. The months that follow are the controlled burn, steady, intentional, clearing only what cannot travel with you. By late summer, you won't need proof that something shifted. You'll be living inside the evidence. And the quiet realization will settle in. You were never late. You were never behind. You were aligning with a moment that was always meant to meet you. February 17th did not change everything in a day. It changed your direction. And that changes everything. If you are hearing this, you are already part of the story the eclipse quietly began. You don't need to rush. You don't need to force outcomes. The work has already started inside you, in the subtle shifts of awareness, in the quiet decisions you made without announcing them. You've been preparing for this moment longer than you realize, and the months ahead will unfold naturally if you stay aligned with the conviction you claimed. Notice the small signs. Pay attention to invitations that feel precise. Observe the doors that open and the paths that close. Each one is a signal that your inner alignment is meeting external reality. And every step you take now, no matter how small, carries the energy of this rare turning point. Remember, you are not alone, even if it feels that way. The universe has a timing for the chosen ones, and this eclipse was your signal, subtle, selective, and profoundly personal. Keep moving forward quietly, intentionally, and with trust in the rhythm that has been guiding you all along. If this message reached you today, pause and reflect. What choice are you ready to claim? What truth inside you are you ready to stand by? These are the sparks that will carry you through the next 6 months, shaping the trajectory that belongs only to you. If this resonated with you, subscribe and turn on notifications, because these energies are cyclical, and the insights you receive now will prepare you for every shift ahead. Share this with someone who feels the quiet pressure of change too. They may need this timing as much as you do. Your ignition has begun. Step forward. Stay aligned. And trust the process. The rest will follow.